All right, everyone, welcome to another Unwrapped episode. Today we have the great pleasure to have with us Mr. Ryan North. Ryan North is a compositing principal at Mainframe Studios. Many years experience in the 3D industry. So today he's here to talk about us what it means to be a compositing principal. For a lot of you that just come out of school and do not know what a compositing principal is, even though you heard about the term compositing. And we're also going to talk about a little thing called procrastination, which is in my opinion, the artist's most major obstacle. What demotivates us, what does motivate us, and how to get over that main obstacle that we face. So Ryan, welcome. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Hey, thank you for having me. My name's Ryan North. I am the compositing principal at Mainframe Studios, where I help the studio do better compositing, or at least that's the job description. I've been doing lighting and compositing for 10 years now, and before that I went to school for film production to learn how to make a film from the ground up, and I focused on camera work. I think that's a pretty good summary.
So as a compositing principal, I want to say that you've been in the industry for a long time. So a thing that I'm always struggling to explain to people what I'm doing is my mom keeps calling me every now and then. She's like, what is exactly that you do again? Because people are asking me. So if you were to explain to an old mom, to someone, what a compositing principal's job entails, like from start to finish, your 9 to 6, how would you explain it to someone?
Okay. So we're assuming that the parental unit that we're referring to has no experience with a 3D animation whatsoever, or visual effects.
I guess we can start by compositing in general. What do you do first? Yeah.
So I can start with compositing, but actually I'm going to start at the reverse. My job is sort of like being a head of department for the studio, and that department is compositing. And what compositing is it's the final look and feel of the image. So it is kind of like I've got so many millennial terms in my brain right now. It's the final bringing together of the image, where we are taking disparate pieces, putting them together, we're balancing the color, we're balancing the intensities. To liken it to previous art forms, it would be we're the final painter and photographer aspect of it. We're developing the negatives, we're adding color, we're taking away color, we're boosting values to make sure that the eye goes where we want it to, as well as to fix any technical imperfections that might have occurred during previous stages of the production. And then for the principal part of it, where it differs from being a head of department traditionally, in the sense of being responsible for recruiting, hiring, the management of who goes onto what project, that side of things. It's more of we are the studio expert in that artistic field. So I'm supposed to be the expert in Nuke, which is the compositing software that the studio uses, and I'm supposed to be the most knowledgeable compositing artist at the studio. I am involved in trying to help shape the culture of the studio, and how I'm involved in that is by being heavily involved with when we're hiring supervisors. As soon as we get to a level where we're hiring somebody for a project that's going to be leading a team, that's when I'm involved with hiring, is to make sure that their knowledge is up to snuff and that they're a good fit for the studio and that they're going to be a good leader.
So you would say your role as a comp principal also extends past just mainly compositing. It's also about culture and cultivating the proper relationships. Let's say between the artists are gonna be that. I don't want to say beneath you, but for lack of a better word, like let's say under you. Like it's just it's not about just being a boss. Let's say it's also about being an example for other people. Would you say?
Yeah, I think so. Because in terms of like hierarchy, so I guess one thing I need to say is that the principal position, I I until I got this position, I'd never heard of it anywhere else. I think that it is a rare thing in the industry, um, and so it's a rare thing. But I know that there's studios that have similar positions. It's just not called the principal. But I'm not technically on any project. Like I
Yeah.
support all of the projects on the studio. So say if a senior or a lead or a supervisor doesn't know how to do something, they'll approach me and I'll try and help them solve that problem, whether it's technical or creative. Um, but I'm not actually within that hierarchy. I'm part of the production technology department.
Yeah.
So it's weird because nobody actually answers to me, but I am just good at convincing people to do what I say. I think would be a good way to put it. But yeah, the authority or hierarchy is a bit of an illusion. Um, I forgot what the question was. Sorry.
My question is like, yeah, the comp principal role is not just mainly about comp because you did mention like when hiring supervisors for the studio and other people, so it kind of extends beyond that into more of a of the general
Yeah.
culture of the studio as well.
Yeah. So thank you for reminding me because obviously I bounce all over the place.
No, I love it.
It's something that I isn't specifically in my job description, but I personally feel it is an incredibly important thing to do. If you bring in people to lead a project that don't actually know how to lead or lead with techniques that are based in fear or negative principles, then you're going to have a toxic culture develop in your team. And as soon as that starts happening on a show, especially in larger studios, when people move from one place to another, like it burns people out, and burnt out people go to new shows, and then that attitude, it's kind of like a virus. It happens. And it's really unfortunate, but one of the best things a studio can do is have good leadership to negate those things, especially in our industry where it's so fast paced, and I would use the term exploitive in terms of the amount of time that is required of people, and the way that we as an industry like go through deadlines so fast. Like it's unavoidable for people to burn out. And so I'd say that like trying to maintain and cultivate the right culture is fundamental to the longevity of your artists as well as the studio.
I'm very glad that you brought the exploitative nature and the toxic, workplace. That it's very important to you to not have that. Which brings me to my next question: is like, how did you end up as a comp principal role? Is this something that you actively pursued? Is this something that you stumbled into, or did you feel like the need of be like, I feel like I'm in a position now that if I go to this position, I can actually bring those changes, as you're saying, like the non-toxic workplace or everything else?
My answer will probably irritate some people that are like striving for the position that I'm in. I was not striving for this position. To be completely frank, I was battling with wanting to leave the industry for a number of years before taking this position, and I actually almost turned down this position. The thing that got me to take it was that the SPCA reached out to me and said that the dog that I was wanting to adopt had become available again, and the studio I work at has a dog policy, and this was before COVID. So I was actually ready to turn down the position, and then I got a dog, and I could take my dog to work. So I was like, whatever, I'll go do it. And one of my best friends was at the studio at that time, so it became something that I knew I could do the position because of my previous history at the studio and my previous experience, work experience. but yeah, I took the position because there was a dog policy and I could bring my dog to work. Um, so yeah, I'm not gonna be one of those people that's like, yeah, I strived for this
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like this is where I was going. At an earlier stage in my career, though, I thought I could do things better, as most new artists do,
Yeah.
and that passion drove me to learn as much as possible to get as good as possible at my like specific things that I liked, specifically in this case lighting and compositing, um, and that competition, that drive, made me start paying attention to what was happening on the production, not just on the team, but like the wider culture of what was going on a movie or a show, um, and my general curiosities about the other departments. Because as much as I liked compositing and lighting, I really liked surfacing. I really liked modeling, because you can't do. It's hard to do good lighting if you've got bad models and bad surfacing.
Yeah.
Um, so those were things that I was always curious about, and I was curious about the holistic approach of animation. I'd previously gone through film production and learned how to produce a film, and so my mind was still coming at it from like a live action approach and wanting to know like if it was. I knew how to make a live action short film, but I don't think I knew how to make an animation start to finish in CG if I had an actual team of people. Um, so my goal at that time, I started eyeballing being a CG supervisor and thinking that was the like position on the ladder that I wanted to climb to. I was never somebody that wanted to be the director, to put my like story ideas forward. That was never what I liked, but I liked the idea of figuring out the best way to technically execute a thing, and I really liked the ideas of how do you visually represent what's in the script, represent what is in the script from a lighting and framing standpoint. So to bring it back to your question, though, how I got here, and I think what got me the position was that I'd previously done some CG souping at a smaller studio on development projects. And for the viewers that are just in school or haven't gone to school yet, I'm going to take a moment to interject that you don't actually need to go to
Yeah.
school
Yeah.
for this. That's
Yeah, it's kind of an
completely
underlying theme of these episodes that I have with different people that you know it, it's not. I don't like to tell people don't go to school, but I'd like to say it's not really necessary.
Yeah.
'Cause, yeah, a lot of people think if I don't go, I'm not gonna get the job, and
Yeah,
a
no,
lot of people
that's
that
not the
didn't go
case.
and get the job, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, like my where I come to, having been through school for like live action filmmaking as well as 3D animation, it comes down to how do you learn?
yeah,
What is your style of learning? For myself, I am distractible. I can't focus if I'm by myself. Work from home is a weird mixture of like absolute bliss and absolute chaos for me. Um, but what it comes down to is like I know I'm somebody that like I do well in a school atmosphere,
yeah,
and the things that drive me in that atmosphere are competition. While being a friendly, happy person, or that's how I present in a professional workplace. I am deeply competitive on a professional level. So being able to like look around a room and be in a classroom and try to be the best one at a thing in there, if I'm into it, that was a thing that drove me. It was a specific time and place to go and work on a thing that didn't have the distractions of being at home. So that worked really well for me going to school.
yeah,
But I know people like my partner. They're somebody that can like sit down and focus on something in the same way that I hyper focus on like lighting a shot. They'll just sit down and like learn things from a textbook, and that blows my mind.
yeah. Oh, me too.
Because yeah, I'm like, how do you do that?
Yeah,
And like I can do that if I'm in a classroom, but
yeah,
if I'm not in the classroom, I better have taken some stimulants and am like really, really into it, because if I have even like a whiff of difficulty or something like that, and I could also just like move over and click on a video game,
Yeah.
I'm out. I'm gone. That's
Yep.
that's what's gonna happen. So like, go to school if that suits you.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't matter. Like honestly, YouTube, you can pick and choose your instructor.
Yeah.
It's amazing the quality of content out there. Um, but back to your back to the question. Tangents. But back to the question. Yeah, it was the CG supervisor part. Continuing to develop a more like holistic idea of an understanding of like how the shows get made, what are the struggles that the other departments go through, how can you solve those problems for them, how can you collaborate to solve problems on the show itself, understanding like what's possible within different budgets. Also working at different scales of studio. I've worked on tiny teams. I've worked at studios that are just starting their 3D adventures in business, and then I've worked on major motion films, like full CG films, and the scale is the change in scale and how that changes production, how that changes the say like the quality of people that are on the team. It's amazing how different each of those scenarios is.
That's great, and I really I can't shake the fact that a dog basically got you the job. That's one hell of a story to say to people.
It's the thing. I guess what I should probably like go back to that because it sounds kind of flippant. And it is. It really is. Like I was saying, I was ready to leave the industry.
Yeah.
I was frustrated with the exploitive nature of it, the pushing people to just like work overtime constantly, the amount of like promise of work-life balance. Like some studios will say like, oh, we're a family studio, and like we encourage work-life balance, but the reality is production budgets and timelines are production budgets and timelines, and if you work at the end of the pipeline, you're the one that always gets crunched. And I have never seen that not be the case, to be completely frank. So after this was probably like I started thinking about leaving the industry at probably the 7 years mark, and maybe even 6 years. I was pretty burnt out. I'd worked from like project to project, and it was really difficult for me to see myself doing this like cyclical thing for the rest of my life. And when the job became available, I had applied for it. I wasn't happy with how some of the interactions went, so I was ready to just walk away. And I also thought that I could do a good job. I knew that it was worth trying to make some kind of changes, or at least like say my piece, because it's not often that a disgruntled person such as myself gets to sit down and do their best to communicate clearly why the problems are there. So it was something that I looked forward to being able to try and make changes in those ways, or at least protect some of the people that were in positions, not under me, but that I had influence to try and improve their living situation.
Well, this is a great segue. It's like you're segueing into exactly what I want to talk about, which is like a little story from me. I don't know about you because you are born and raised in Canada, right? So I don't know how that differs when it comes to the glamour of the job. But for example, I was a little kid back home in Cyprus, a country nobody ever knows. We used to watch TV shows with my friends and stuff, and it was, blowing our minds, right? And then you see like, Transformers or The Matrix, and people are like, man, I can't imagine how it would be to work on some of these things, or animation or Pixar. and there's a certain hype that gets built, like this is going to be the best job in the world, and as soon as I go there, it's going to be like autographs and pictures and everything. And then a small kid from Syracuse comes to Vancouver, and then I see in the streets, Flash being filmed and the Arrow, and my mind is blown, like, oh my god, I used to watch this last week back home.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
now
yeah.
it's this. I can't even, like, this has to be true. I will work in the industry. It's just, confetti dropping everywhere every time I walk into the studio. And you work a year and a half in, and you just like, what the hell did I sign up for? Right?
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
not how I imagined it. And, there's bullying, there's exploitation, there's, unpaid OT, and I get it. We're not, I see some people, we're not building buildings, we're not construction workers working 25 hours a day, but, I've seen people, mental health in this industry is like such a fragile thing right now, from people like, just people working like 15 hours a day, 16 hours a day, overtime, not getting paid, not getting sick leaves because, they ran out because there's only so much their brain can handle. And it used to be like, I'm a new in the industry. You've been here much longer than me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. But from the time I've been in the industry, I've seen this happen. I've seen people saying, I'm going to take a year off. And then it's been 3 years now. They can't go back because they have such a PTSD, I would say, in quotes, of what happened to them in the industry, of the crunch and the exploitation and everything. Is there something that you think is... personally, I feel we need to talk about it because not many people do talk about it. They hold this industry to such higher standards as like impossible to live up to. And also, do you think it's actually changing right now? I do see more and more people talking about it, but do you think it's actually in a point that do we have any say to change it, or is it more of a let's just talk about it and just show people that we're just talking about it?
Yeah, no, I've definitely got some opinions on this. So the experience that you're describing of, you've got this glamour, this idea of like, this is the thing I'm going to do, it's going to be great. And then a year and a half in, you're like, what is this? There's a couple of things that like mix into it, I think. One is that if, sorry, I'm like fidgeting on my desk as I try and like get my thoughts in order. This industry leverages the passion to create. Specifically, it leverages and exploits the passion to create from people that are new to the industry. And that's important, and we're going to get back to that when we touch on the last point that you made. But the thing that happens is like you're super stoked, you want to make these things, you're learning about it, it's super interesting, you're going to get to work on the Avengers or something like that. Like the sky's the limit at that point, right? And then you get in and you realize like the hours are crazy, personalities are huge, and like, oh man, there's so much to touch on with what you said. So to specifically talk about like the disillusionment that happens, it's, to me, that disillusionment happens because there's massive artist egos, like the bullying and things like that. Egos run rampant. I feel like you're lucky if you work at a place that has good leadership with leadership training that has some form of accountability with the leadership as well. And because this is an artistic field, there is like cultural, societal narratives that we kind of play into. The idea of like the auteurs, if we go back in film history to like Hitchcock and Kubrick and things like that, this idea that there's like a genius behind the thing, right? Because that's also a marketable thing to have a name that's like, oh, it's from the mind of this person. There's that element of it where if you're really, really good at it, you get away with being an asshole. Sorry, can I say that?
Yeah, it's fine.
Just bleep it out. And that's not okay in a workplace. But it's happened, and it's happened to my understanding, throughout the history of this industry, and because it is a relatively new industry, the people that started it tended to be kind of dickish. It was a lot of like people in their parents' garage that were really smart and clever at figuring things out, but like maybe they didn't flex the social muscles, and we're at this awkward stage where like these are massive industries with armies of people working on things. Sometimes the most experienced people are the least qualified to lead, and that happens frequently across the industry. Like my first job, the first show that I was on, somebody on a different department, but in the same room as me, flipped out about, and this is very low stakes. Like this was not a high stakes project whatsoever.
Yeah.
They flipped out about like somebody delivering a lighting pass without the proper AOVs or something like that, and they broke a keyboard, like just full on
Wow.
smashed a keyboard. And this was somebody that was like in their late 30s at that
Yeah.
time, and I remember just being like, "What?
It's
Who are
happening
these
right now.
people?" Yeah, like I thought I was watching a YouTube video of like somebody failing in a Warcraft raid and like breaking their keyboard. It was mind-boggling to me that these types of personalities were like the seniors, the leadership. To try and pull it back onto the disillusionment thing, though, like you get in and you meet these people. Some of them are great, some of them are horrible. There's bullying, there's the constant pressure because it's just constantly about staying on schedule. And when the quickest thing that I think that leads to that disillusionment is realizing that like profit margins are pretty low, is what we're told from the actual production house standpoint. So you've got just the pressure coming down. The studio's like, we need to do this faster to make sure that we're actually making a profit on this. So that goes to the producer, that goes from the producer to the coordinators, or depending on how your show's set up, to your supervisor. And then the pressure just gets down to the artist, and you're kind of like pushed to do things faster. And so if you're a creative person that goes into this industry, you want to make something good. You want to like be proud of what you're doing, and you're very suddenly hit with this wall in your first job of calling it quits on a shot before you think it's done, or being pushed to do it faster. And like maybe you're lucky and you've got a lot of support from good leadership on your team where they train you on the job and teach you what to do and how to be quicker at it. But sometimes you don't, and you're just getting pushed to do something faster that you might not even know how to do. But I think that disillusionment comes from that like very sudden and abrupt clash between the business aspect of making movies and the drive to make something, to be a creative person. And you could also talk about it. I know for me specifically, I'm a very collective-minded person. I'm thinking about like the whole picture. I'm trying to work on a shot that fits into a sequence of things. I think about my direct senior or supervisor or lead or whoever or CG super, VFX soup, whoever I'm responding to. Like they're my customer. Like I'm doing my best to like treat them as a customer. My dad owned a stereo repair shop when I was growing up, so like customer service was a thing that got like drilled in. And instead of just being like, I'm not dealing with the public, I'm dealing with this person. That's my customer. But yeah, for me, I'm a creative person and I'm thinking about the collective and like what makes the best picture, not just the pixels that I'm working on, but the whole movie. And then just inherently in terms of our society, it's a capitalist scenario where we're trying to make money on a thing. So that becomes very individualistic. It's about making money. It's about getting each thing done and covering their own ass from a business standpoint, and that's rough. Like if you're coming at it from like a collective creative standpoint, and then you're just smashing into this like individualistic capitalist mindset, like reconciling those things creates disillusionment so fast. I forgot what the second point was. Oh, industry burnout? Was that what was the next point?
Yeah. So, because with the disillusionment comes the realization that, you're just a cog in the machine right now. You're not special. you can say quit, and someone's just gonna be like having two like you that just finished school, coming,
Yeah.
and they're
Oh,
like,
and
yes,
how?
movies, and then
Yeah.
and then those guys in a
Okay.
year are gonna burn out, and they're gonna leave, and some new is gonna come, yay, movies, and they're gonna come, and the cycle
Yeah.
keeps continuing, and with that comes the burnout, because you realize that I really want to do this. At which point am I allowing myself to go, just balls deep, let's say, into this job before my mind just breaks, and every time I see an animation or a character in the TV, I just want to switch everything off and go to bed. At which point am I'm doing this and getting all the yelling, or all the bullying, all the weird deadlines that come and go like it's nothing, and then still be happy to go home, instead of just going there, giving your all, doing all the crunch, and then never wanting to see this industry before, and then just becoming an accountant or something.
Yeah. So, uh, the one thing I want to say before I move into like fully answering or responding to that is that I've been very fortunate in that my first job, despite being disillusioned by the end of that project, I had an amazing set of people around me and teaching me at that point. I was really fortunate in that it was a small team. The people that were my seniors and supervisors that were looking out for me did their absolute best to shield the like production drama from hitting the team itself, and also took the time to teach us. Like we had dailies where we got to develop as artists and got to look at each other's work and help each other grow. We got while there wasn't much time to do it, we had a collective sense on those teams of helping each other out, and that was amazing. And it's something that at certain levels of the industry, in terms of production budgets and the types of projects, you don't get that. Sometimes that's just not viable to actually have dailies and to like develop the artistic qualities of the people that are coming fresh out of school, and that's really rough. But I've also been fortunate in that while I've experienced these things, I haven't experienced too much bullying. Part of that is like I'm a tall white dude that talks well and and I'm generally disarming in my ability to interact with people. I also because of my own life circumstances tend to push back when I see that type of thing and try to put people in their place. But it's really difficult to do that if you are in any kind of like marginalized position, and that's also a class thing. That's also a hierarchy of business thing. Like if you're a junior, it's really hard to say no to something. It's really hard to be like, hey, you're being a dick, because people have control over your financial security, and that's scary shit. But there are places that are really good, and one thing that I think in terms of like the bullying and that kind of thing, I think it is getting better in some places, and there's a certain thing that I see, like one of the places that is simultaneously like great to work at and I struggled with was Sony. Sony was a place where it was like artistic boot camp. It's too big and there's too many eyes on the frame for you to fail at what you're doing. And that's something that is fascinating to me because like everybody there wants to make the best possible image, and they are invested in making sure you get good enough to like produce that image. And that's super cool to me. I'm not going to talk about the other side of it because I want to go back there at some point. But it comes down to the standard thing of like they just need a lot of hours from you. However, they are very upfront with that. It's in your contract. You get paid regulation overtime, and it's upfront. There's nothing duplicitous about any of the interactions with Sony. They just need a lot of time because that's the way they operate. So if you use like an Alberta reference where I'm from, it's like going to work on the oil rigs. You're not going to have a lot of personal time or ability to see your friends, but you're going to make a lot of money and you're going to get better at what you do. and that's pretty cool in some ways. But because of those things, because it's so big and there's so many projects going on at this point, they pay well, and paying well means that they've got good people for the most part, and they have enough production staff to support people. So people are actually they're doing the jobs that they're paid to do rather than taking on multiple roles, and that generally means that people are less stressed and they treat each other better, and that's something to look out for when you're taking jobs in the industry. Is there enough support staff? Are people doing multiple roles? How stressed are people? Because the more stressed people are, the worse the interactions are going to be, and people are going to get burnt out faster, and burnt out people treat each other badly.
Yep.
Um, yeah, so definitely look out for that kind of thing. To bring it back to the part about changing the industry and changing like the amount of hours and things like that. I'm a big believer in unionization. I think that we need collective bargaining to kind of push for these things. I think that specifically in Vancouver, we are at a disadvantage because we are the cheaper labor pool. We have less history of unions in these areas. Um, like the live action film side of things has unions, but it hasn't been represented in the same way that there was in the United States. Like, to my understanding, the United States and working for the companies down there before most of them moved up here, uh, it was higher pay and better treatment, and there was union type behaviors about it. Um, I I worry about whether or not we will ever unionize based on what you said of the churn.
Yep.
To take uh, what is it, a quote from The Expanse, that the churn of people getting burnt out and leaving the industry. At one point, I read, I can't remember where, but it was basically saying that the average lifespan of a VFX artist is like, or VFX career is like 5 years, and that does not surprise me whatsoever. Um, but the reason that I think the unionization is going to be difficult is because the prestige and the hopefulness of students coming out of school. We need so many people, and so many people get burnt out, and it preys on the desire to make movies. It preys on the desire to work on prestigious things. It preys on the the hope to be part of something, and then these people get in the door, and they're in a power dynamic where they're afraid to rock the boat because it is such a competitive industry. Like, across the world, you have societal narratives that like the arts aren't important. So if you
Yep.
have a job as an artist and you're making money, you should just be happy that you've got it. So there's that element of it. There's the fact that you are in a lot of the 3D schools are for-profit schools, and they're churning out 30 people every 2 months or so. And so you're like, I've got a bunch of other people that I need to compete against just from my class. What about the people ahead of me? What about the people from the other schools? Um, so you've got this like societal narrative of like the arts aren't important. You've got all of the competitive aspect of it once you do have it, and the power dynamics once you're in the door. That it makes it very difficult for people to rock the boat. It makes it very difficult for people to like see the value in it, because they haven't experienced it yet. And generally, a lot of the people are younger as well, so like the lived experience, they might not have the lived experience of like being able to recognize exploitation.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I think that the churn and the preying on younger, fresh people is something that will make it very difficult to unionize over time. That being said, I think one of the things that happens is because of that leaning on cheap, fresh artists, we are constantly in a push to reduce budgets so that the company can be more profitable. And I mean, like, as an industry, and that leads to people who are maybe not actually that qualified being put into positions of authority and leadership on projects, and then that just kind of keeps happening. You keep
Yeah.
getting people bumped up the ladder that don't actually have the experience, don't actually have the understanding, but still they feel lucky to be given the opportunity and they want to try. But that happening across a studio leads to more errors being made, less consistency. Things get harder to do. You end up spending more money doing things than you should, and eventually that's going to take its toll on a studio and take a studio down as well. Um, it's a rough cycle. We're in a big race to the bottom, and it's not just our industry.
Yeah.
Side note to your viewers, I am not the person who's optimistic about this stuff. I get to
So,
take my dog to work, and I've got a pretty sweet gig. Yeah. Uh,
which is it's interesting because while you're saying this, I was thinking because I want to tie this to procrastination. Because I remember me, like, let's see, before I went to film school, uh, I was in it. I was like, oh, I want to do this little thing that's just, by today's standards, it's nothing, right? But back then, I was a kid with a laptop that was barely running. I was like, oh, I'm going to learn this. I'm going to make this. And I went to film school. I was all in. And then I got my first job. I got hit by that train called real life and saw how it worked. And then slowly I started getting demotivated. It slowly became, let me do my 9 to 6, and I don't want to see this again until tomorrow. So, do you think the rate of people churning in and out, because people are getting so burned out, not by all studios, but let's say by a large amount of them, does fit into why artists are such huge procrastinators? Is that the whole mental thing of, oh my God, I'm doing this 12 hours a day. Now I have to go home and do my project?
for some people, yeah. I'm not going to point to one thing as
Yeah.
being like the cause of it. Stress within life stops people from doing things. Being burnt out of just like, I've been looking at a monitor all day and now I don't want to look at a monitor when I get home. That makes sense. You just wanting variety of experiences can stop you from doing the thing. I think that there's a narrative in, I mean, like, all I know is North American culture. There's a narrative within North American culture that you got to hustle, you got to like do your side thing. We live in a capitalism. We live under capitalism, and there's all of these narratives about how you're supposed to monetize your hobbies. There's like an internal guilt that builds up when you don't do these things, whether it's a side project or a monetization of a side project, or the like continual development of those skills. I can't say that like spending the day doing the thing is what stops you from doing it at night. I know for me that is at times absolutely been the case. When you talk about like not wanting to like look at 3D stuff, like I actually stopped watching 3D animated films for a long time. Like I mean, I had to watch the Marvel things because I'm just a giant comic book nerd, but
Yeah.
like I went from like wanting to see every Pixar film the day it came out to like not touching them for years.
Yeah.
And I think Soul was the first movie I watched that was a full 3D film. Yeah, it was Soul. And I hadn't watched anything since like Brave, I think.
Oh, wow.
And I was just like, I'm good.
Yeah.
I can't do this. I can't turn off my brain when I'm watching it. I can't enjoy
Yeah.
it. I'm just sitting there looking at all of the like looking for things that are wrong in it. And that's not an enjoyable thing. And I realized that I didn't enjoy engaging with the thing that I did every day. But that also led me to understand that the things that I like about working in CG isn't the like I'm making a movie. For me, it's like a technical crossword puzzle. I think about it as I have a technical and creative problem to solve, how am I going to solve it? Um, I'm a craftsperson that likes to solve problems, and that's how I approach my job. Um, that's my framework, my philosophy around it. But to get to the procrastination side of things, for me, if I don't have a problem that I'm solving, then what am I doing? I'm not a spontaneous creator. I don't have stories to tell, unless it's a Dungeons and Dragons game. And yeah, so I beat myself up for a long time because I thought I was supposed to be doing these things. I told myself that I was one of these people, and I wasn't honest with myself in that what I actually liked. I love looking at art. I'll stare at ArtStation for hours, but a lot of the time, unless somebody's like it's the right alchemical mixture of motivations, I won't do anything. And for me, it's like, am I being paid to do it? Is it an interesting problem to solve? And that's a very privileged place to come from, that I get to do that. I think that people are too hard on themselves about like the stress of life. It's difficult to live. It's difficult to live during COVID. It's difficult to live in general. Whether you're trying to like make creative things or just fulfill like familial requirements, whether it's like hopes and dreams that people have for you or your own hopes and dreams, the pressures that we put on ourselves. We live at a very complicated time, and it is very difficult to sit down and be like, I'm going to make a masterpiece, or I'm going to continue to learn a new thing when you're an adult. I think it's super easy to do this when you're younger because life is literally simpler because you don't understand things and you haven't been beaten up by it. You're not struggling generally to pay rent and that kind of thing. That being said, there's also a flip side to that. Some of the best artists that I've met are the people that are like, they're having to work their ass off just to make sure that they've got a roof over their head. And usually those are people that I'm like consistently amazed by, and they will always be able to surpass me in a shorter amount of time because they're just trying to make ends meet, and like they've got that hustle. I wish I could tell you that I have an answer to procrastination. I don't. The thing that I will say is like people need to be softer with themselves a lot of the time. Some people need to beat themselves up a little bit more, but others, like, life's hard, and like beating yourself up about things like doesn't make it better. It doesn't.
I think it is a key thing, right? I mean, I've just told myself. No, I don't have statistics, but just personally, it's always the fact that you have this vision in your head, and if it's not perfect, and then when you start making, if it's not exactly what you think of it, then it's not good enough.
Oh shit! I just toss it, and I'm like, I'm gonna walk away from my computer now.
Exactly. So, at what point is like, people always strive for something to be perfect, especially 3D artists, because as you said, it's an immense competition right out there. So even though I try, at least personally, and I would say a lot of the people I know, to be like, I'm going to do the best I can for me, it's hard to do that when, as you said, you go on ArtStation and you see 15 million other things that are 10 times better that you can do. And then suddenly your little 10-second piece that you wanted to do doesn't seem that enticing anymore. So you're like, maybe I should, maybe I should start Call of Duty or something.
Yeah, like I could watch The Mandalorian again, right? That sounds good.
And I don't know if that's just because we strive to be perfect, or if it's, as you said, like something like built through society, that you have to be really, really good to achieve what you want, and sometimes good enough, it's not good enough.
I think that there's a combination of things. I think that's partly like who we are as people, the perfectionism thing, because I have definitely met people who are not perfectionists, and holy shit, do they do well in this industry.
I know, and it bothers me, not because of them, but because of me. Like, why can't I do that?
So, in terms of like, how do I put this? There's a person that I worked with in my first job in the industry. And to be frank, I had like a completely I had like a superiority thing about it. Like I was like, I've got more education than this person, my first passes are better than this person. Like, why are they always ahead of me in terms of like hierarchy? And I wanted to compete with them, but it was also very difficult for me to compete with them because I didn't know how to compete with them, because they were doing something completely different than me. And uh, it was completely misplaced, the like low key animosity that I had for this person, and that makes it sound really bad. Like, I really loved working with this person; they were absolutely great. Um, they were the type of person that like got their first pass done, and it was super rough, and they did more versions. But the thing that they did was they just did what the supervisor wanted. They were like, "Here's a first pass." Supervisor gave notes. Here, they do what the supervisor asked them to do. Supervisor gives them more notes, and they kept going. And this person is the one that I know that has gone the farthest in terms of the types of projects, meeting their own goals or their dreams in terms of the projects and level of prestige of the projects that they wanted to work on. They've the sky was the limit for them because they worked with people and just did what people wanted them to do, and they didn't like they didn't like
Micromanage everything by
grind
themselves. Yeah.
themselves down. Yeah, and they didn't feel like it didn't seem like they felt like they had something to prove to everybody around them. uh, Honestly, having that perfectionist chip on my shoulder like held me back at times. We ended up having different desires in terms of the things that we wanted to do, but it's somebody that I'm very proud to know in my in my wizened age.
Yeah.
I recognize that the confusion or animosity or ill feelings that I had towards this person, or the competitiveness, I think that's the best word for it. The competitiveness that I had between myself and this person was completely misplaced, and it was wrong to feel those things. But I did feel those things, and now I understand like why things worked for them the way that they did, and why I struggled with it. And it was very much that internal perfectionism that slowed me down in some ways.
it's
But it's also just, yeah.
it's weird that you mentioned that, because this is, if I had one thing that I took away from film school that like applies perfectly to what you just said and how I feel, and slowly try to make myself do stuff like personal work, is one of my teachers. I could not tell you what I learned from him class wise.
Hmm.
But the one thing that he kept saying is that when you get a job, just address the notes. Every class, he would just come in and he would say, nothing less, nothing more, just the notes. It's super important. You're not a wizard. You have no idea what the director wants or what anybody else wants. If they tell you blue, you do blue. If you tell you go left, you go left. You don't go left and then be like, but this also will look nice. Nope, just the notes.
Yep.
And I kind of slowly working here, I kind of realize how right that is. Is that because not
Yeah.
only when you try to do something that you think is better, because it's subjective, right? Because what's better for you comes from years before of stuff you saw, of things you've been. So if you try to do better, they can either like it, and yeah, you get a little pump to yourself, but now you ruined every shot of everybody else that didn't do that. Or they don't like it, and now you're the artist that can't follow notes. So it's
Yep.
like a lose-lose situation, no matter how I see it now. So I can see now, like just do exactly what they want, and then that's fine.
Yeah, so this is something that I would link into like the artist ego thing. We as CG artists, unless you're the art director, are not paid for your ideas. You are paid for your technical execution of putting on screen the thing that the person who's paid to come up with the idea is asking you to do. Their job is to have those ideas. You can say like, hey, what about this in a review, if that's the type of situation that you're in your workplace. But your job as an artist is to do the notes and to make the thing that you're asked to make, not to go off the rails. And when you do those things, when you go off the rails, when you're putting your ideas first without being asked to, it damages the collective, as you're saying. That like now your shot doesn't match other shots in the sequence. I've had that on a very large team where I was doing one close-up, another artist was doing the other close-up of two characters in a sequence, and they were supposed to have the same type of nose, and my shots come up, and it's like, okay, this is good, like 2 or 3 versions in, this person does their first version of a shot, and the nose of this animal looks completely different, and suddenly the VFX soup is like, why does your nose look different, kind of thing, like why doesn't it look as good as this one? And I'm spending all of this time trying to figure out like what's going on, asking them like what's in their katana recipe. They're telling me they didn't change anything. I go like 4 versions in, it's been like 3 days, people are getting frustrated with me, and then the people who are using my shot as a key shot about like why doesn't the nose match, and then eventually I go to like digging deep into the katana recipe, only to find out that they've like completely redone the nose surfacing, but they told me that they hadn't, because for them they were trying to protect themselves from like they'd done something they weren't supposed to do. But then I found it and had to go like, okay, and pass that on to everybody that was doing the same as shots for me. But it held up a production by like 3 days, and you could have just told me. You could have just told me you'd resurface the nose as a lighting artist. That's a weird thing to do.
Time is thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah, it's an expensive thing. That piece of advice that teacher gave you is an amazing piece of advice, and it's literally going to be something that saves you stress. You'll get gray hairs later in life. Maybe you won't develop heart conditions. It's something that it's what the job is, and like coming to an understanding of like the job isn't the art and the art isn't the job would be a way that I would describe it now if I were teaching a class.
That is amazing, and I think we just found the title of the episode. That was a great quote.
I'm happy. Hopefully, it's a good soundbite too. I just want to touch on that procrastination bit once more. I feel lucky that I got to where I was in my career because I just did what I liked for the longest time. And that was the thing that carried me through school, allowed me to like hyper focus and just sit at a computer for hours and hours and hours, because I really liked what I did. I loved learning ZBrush. I loved learning the things. It was a new and exciting thing. When I got into the industry, I discovered that I really liked high quality images in full CG. So I focused on that. I wanted to work on full animation feature films, and I wanted to have enough time to really polish a shot. So I focused on movies. And I loved those things, and that allowed me to sit down and work without like being distracted for hours and hours on end. I didn't understand that I myself had really bad procrastination issues and struggle to like maintain focus until I got into a managerial position. That was something that there's a bunch of tasks involved with my job that I don't like. I don't like doing it. It's hard to focus on. It's awkward socially or politically, and I'm not into it. And those are the things that I struggle with, like keeping my nose to the grindstone on. But it made me realize that in the other areas of my life, on my home projects and things like that, that if I wasn't working on it, maybe I didn't like it. And maybe I have a narrative about telling myself that I like these things and that I want to do these things in my spare time, when maybe I've changed and I want to do something else in my spare time. Like at this point, I'm lucky that this is my day job, but it doesn't mean I need to do that single-mindedly in my life. I'm at a point where I want to spend time with my friends or walk my dog,
Yeah.
and that's where I'm at. I want to like, I worked like Ebenezer Scrooge through my 20s, and now I want to like have a relationship with my family and stuff like that.
That's fully understandable. And I think a lot of people, as we grow, especially this industry, is like taking years away from you faster than anything else, just from how fast the rhythms are. So it doesn't take much for you to be like, okay, I did my OT, I did the crazy hours. I just want to find a simple place to stay so I can have time
Yeah.
for something else.
Yeah, it's how do I put this? Oh no, I'm not going to use that quote. I don't have permission to. Okay.
Well, what would you say closing, like for the person that is just starting out, trying to find his first job in the industry, from all your years and your ups and downs that you've been through, what would be the one piece of advice for people just trying to find the first job?
Oh, uh, your first job is your first job. Uh, don't. I think I think my advice is going to be for the people who get their first job and then feel like they need to hold on to that and stay at that company.
Yeah.
Our industry wants you to not move around, um, because it means that you're not renegotiating contracts. Uh, I would strongly recommend that, like, if you have the financial security to be able to move to a different studio, work at different studios, work at different sizes of studios, types of projects, um, get a variety of experience of the types of projects and places to work so that you can start to learn where you fit in, the types of teams that you like to work on, the types of leaders you like to work under, the types of projects. Sorry, whether it's VFX or full animation or commercials or video game engines. Um, each company, even if it's the same size as another company, is a different thing entirely. It's run by different people. Everybody does things differently. While it might look on the surface like it's the same, it comes down to the individuals who are making calls that widely affect how a company operates. Um, and different people have different philosophies, so they put money into different areas. There are going to be studios that fit you way better, and there's going to be teams that fit you way better. And types of projects that fit you way better, and you're not going to know that if you don't try other studios. You also have the opportunity to renegotiate or negotiate new contracts each time you move. That's what I would like to say, is that move around, get experience. Also, movies aren't the only place to apply your skills. There's stuff with 3D printing. There's stuff with the other people that you've talked to on this channel. Movies aren't the only thing. And honestly, it can get boring.
Well, thank you very, very much, Ryan. That was amazing to have you here, and thank you very much. I hope I didn't take too much of your time.
It was great. I loved it.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah.
I was gonna say I could talk more about other stuff on another episode if you want.
I'm
in terms of,
definitely
like, getting
down
another
to
job.
have you again.
Cool.
That was great stuff, and I hope everybody that's watching, at least you got something out of it, something you can apply to your daily lives. And as everybody else saying on YouTube, please like and subscribe or share it to everyone, for all the 10 people that are gonna watch this. And thank you very, very much, and see you next time. Bye bye.